In a recent video, we looked at an older model from Seiko's 5 collection, the SNZF25, a mid-sized dive watch with an unusual colour combination. It was a fun, comfortable watch to wear, but in that video, I noted that it can be hard to find one for sale. So, what if you can't track one down? Well, you could always look at the brand's current offerings, and that's exactly what we'll do today. Welcome to Addicted to Watches. Today, we're taking a look at a watch that was released in 2023 to much hype, especially one in a particular light blue colour. I tried that one on, and didn't like it very much, but found another colour combination that did really grab me. This is the Seiko SBSA227. That might not be the model number you're used to for this watch. You might know this watch as the SRP K31, the international release of the watch. The one I have here comes from the domestic Japanese release, and, aside from the model number, the only real difference between the two is that this one has the Made in Japan printing on the dial because it was in fact made in Japan. Back in the time of the SKX, that was a difference that a lot of people placed a big emphasis on, but I'm not so sure that these days it holds the same weight. Either way, the two watches are identical in every other way, so everything I say about this SBSA is also applicable to the SRPK. This line of watches was released as a replacement to the discontinued mid-sized SKX models such as the SKX013. In 2023, Seiko put out 4 different colours: this champagne dial, a black dial, teal blue dial, and orange dial version. The official retail price from Seiko is $325 US. Here in Australia, that retail price is 525 Australian dollars. But these can be found very easily for just about half that, coming in somewhere between 250 and 300 from a range of different places. Hunting around, you can probably get an even better price than that for one of these. At full price, there are definitely better options out there, though perhaps not quite in this smaller size. But if you grab one for the discounted price, it has a lot to offer. Seiko have stuck to the formula for the most part, but also made some meaningful changes. Starting with the most obvious change, the dial, and Seiko have chosen this very subtle champagne colour with a gentle sunburst finish. The sunburst is strong enough to just catch the light occasionally, and really elevates the watch in my opinion, compared to if it had a much stronger sunburst effect. The colour combination with a grey bezel insert, which we'll look at a bit later, is a bit of an unexpected match, but actually what drew me to this watch in the first place. Another change on the dial compared to its predecessor is in relation to the hour markers. The basic design and layout is the same, with a rounded triangle at 12, ovals at 6 and 9, and circles everywhere else, but these ones are applied rather than printed. The surrounds to the markers are all in a gunmetal grey colour rather than silver, and this ties in nicely with the bezel. Though the markers have been given frames, the day and date window at 3 just has a bevel to its edge, maybe to draw less attention to itself. Above the pinion, there is a final piece of applied material in the form of the Seiko logo, while the new 5 Superman shield is just printed underneath. Moving below the pinion, and we can see the word automatic in a cursive script. I do appreciate Seiko not adding the water resistance rating here, or any other text down below the pinion. The dial does already feel a bit smaller thanks to the case being shrunk, so I think it needs to be a bit cleaner to balance that out. All of the printing is in a dark grey colour, but not quite black, which carries over to the colour scheme that the watch has going with the bezel. Around the outside of the dial is an angled chapter ring in a light champagne colour to match that dial. Here, there is a minute track printed since there is none on the dial itself. Each 5 minutes has been marked with a larger rectangle as well for added legibility. While we're zoomed in close here, let's talk about the hands. They too have the same gunmetal grey finish as the hour markers, and are the classic Seiko dive watch handset. An interesting thing I noticed is that while the original SKX013 had an arrow tip second hand, Seiko have decided to go with a needle hand and lollipop counterbalance instead here. This hand is more like the one on the full-size SKX and newer 5 range. Maybe it was an economies of scale thing, since they were already making this hand design for other watches, or maybe it was just a bit of laziness, but I prefer the original white arrow tip hand instead. I think it just gave the watch a bit more character. Regardless of how you or I feel about that design change, we've got more of the watch to look at, and up next is the crystal covering everything we've just talked about. In typical budget Seiko fashion, it's hardlex of course, Seiko's own proprietary mineral crystal. It's dead flat, and does surprisingly well for itself when it comes to reflections for a piece of glass that doesn't have any anti-reflective coating. Sure, you can get better specs from other brands at the same price, but if you're all about the specs, then you're probably not looking to buy a Seiko anyway. Let's take a step back and have a look at the dimensions of the watch. I've been saying this is a mid-sized diver, but what is a mid-sized diver? In this case, it's a watch with a diameter of 38mm. For a dress or field watch, that's a pretty average size, but a dive watch will feel a lot smaller with the same diameter thanks to that bezel. Thickness is not too bad at all, coming in at 12.1mm, and the lug-to-lug is kept compact in classic Seiko fashion at just 43.6mm. The width between the lugs is thankfully a standard 20mm, so you're likely to have plenty of other options available if you want to change out the bracelet. It wouldn't be much of a dive style watch without a bezel, and this one has a particularly nice charcoal grey insert. The minutes have been marked up to 20 and every 10 has received Arabic numerals. The use of the gunmetal grey for the hands, indices and dial printing really ties in well with this insert, and is a great match for the champagne dial. Bezel action is what you'd expect from Seiko, so if you've had one of their other divers, it's pretty much the same as those. Take a listen. The case itself is pretty much what you would get if you took the classic SKX case and shrunk it down. It's got the signature crown at 4 flanked by crown guards that smoothly grow out from the case. The top surface is brushed, but this transitions into polishing on the very curved case sides. From here, we can see just how short that lug-to-lug is, as well as some drilled lugs at each end to assist with strap changes. Turning over, and we get a look at an unsigned crown that does not screw down, a complaint many had with these 5KX models. It may not screw down, but at least the caseback does. That caseback, as you can clearly see, is a display caseback. It gives those of us curious enough to look at the back of the watch rather than the front, a peek inside at the 4R35 automatic movement. You should be well aware of this movement by now, and if you're not, welcome to the watch hobby. This must be your first time. It hand winds, hacks, beats 6 times per second, and will run for about 40 hours on a full wind. Rugged, reliable, robust, and ready to go. A nice little detail is the Seiko 5 logo branded onto the rotor. As we saw earlier while covering the dial and hands, they have been filled with Lume. So, let's take a look at that. When the lights go out, this watch actually does pretty well for itself, and might even punch a little above its weight. There is no Lume pip in the bezel, so it wouldn't function as a proper dive watch, but the dial and hands glow pretty bright initially, as well as lasting a decent amount of time before fading out. One final thing to cover is the bracelet. What we've got is a one-piece link designed to look like a three-piece one, but in reality that doesn't make much of a difference. Nor do the hollow end links. Nor does the fact that the links themselves are folded rather than solid. Those are all valid criticisms, and are not ideal, but when the watch is on wrist, they are not really things you notice at all. What you might notice is the pressed clasp and outer shell with only 2 positions of micro adjustment. I am ready to admit I'm in the minority here, but I have no issues with pressed clasps. I do with the lack of micro adjustment, don't get me wrong, but a pressed clasp results in a much slimmer profile compared to most budget milled ones. When this one is closed, it is barely much thicker than the bracelet links themselves, whereas a milled clasp with milled outer will often be twice as thick if not more. The brand has done the kindness of putting its logo on the security foldover. This watch does come from their budget range, and for me, this one is more than fit for purpose. With all that out of the way, let's get it on wrist and see how it wears. Wearing this watch has been a bit of an interesting experience for me. There are times where I might think it feels a little bit too small and out of place on my wrist, but there are others where I think it's spot on. Of course, it goes without saying that it wears on the small side, but who's to say that's a bad thing? Small and compact means very comfortable, and especially with that short lug to lug, the watch just hugs the wrist. As I turn my wrist, you can get a glimpse of the subtle sunburst effect on the dial, as well as that grey bezel insert shifting from a lighter grey to deep charcoal grey. I've kept this one on the bracelet while wearing it, but if you do want to change it up, this brown leather looks surprisingly good on the watch. It might be breaking a rule putting a dive style watch on a leather strap, but the warm tone of the dial pairs really well with the warm brown of the leather. For a more traditional combination, this black NATO is always going to be a safe choice. Black goes with everything after all. Alternatively, this army green colour complements the champagne dial really nicely too. If you want to take it a step even further, you could go with something like this, with accents running the length of the strap that match the dial almost perfectly. I know that this watch isn't going to appeal to everyone. I don't think it's supposed to anyway. There are plenty of people out there who think any watch under 40mm is a lady's watch, and that's fine for them. This watch though is for the ever-growing segment of the market that is gravitating towards smaller watches and providing them with a solid choice that won't break the bank. Of the 4 colours released by the brand, I definitely say this is the pick of the bunch, but in general, if you like the look and the size, you can't really go wrong here, especially for the price. What do you think about this watch? Is it too small for your wrist, or mine? Should I have just gotten the full-sized one instead? Is there another good option out there for a mid-sized diver I'm missing? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time.